Welcome everyone to a meeting of the Boston Region MPO Planning Organization. I'm David Muller, represent Secretary Monica Tibbetts Nuts here. Could you please put up the next slide? You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. You can read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.boston_MPO.org/MPO_DISCRIMINATION. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. Find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact Betsy Harvey via the chat box or at eharve@ctps.org or 857-702-3701. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, please contact Betsy Harvey of the MPO staff at eharvey@ctps.org or 857-702-3701. Please call the roll.
Thank you. I'll call the roll starting with MassDOT seat 1.
This is David Moeller.
MassDOT seat 2.
John Bouchard, present.
MassDOT Highway Division.
John Romano, MassDOT Highway here.
MBTA.
Sandy Johnston, representing General Manager Phil Eng in the MBTA.
Hi, this is Sarah Lee from MassCorp.
Thank you. Eric Barassa, MAPC.
Yes, good morning, Eric Barassa with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
MBTA Advisory Board.
Good morning. I got my Cane's Donuts coffee, and it's Brian Kane representing the MBTA Advisory Board.
Excellent. Advisory Council.
Morning, Happy New Year. Leonard Dickens Advisory Council here.
New Year. City of Boston. VP.
Quite hear that, but I think that was BTD Jen Rowe representing Mayor Michelle Wu and the City of Boston.
City of Boston, BPDA.
I do not see Jim Fitzgerald.
Thank you so much. At large, City of Everett.
Jay Monty, representing Mayor DeMaria and the City of Everett.
At large, City of Newton.
Good morning, David Kozis, representing Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller and the City of Newton.
At large, Town of Arlington.
Good morning, John Alessi, representing Select Board Chair Eric Helmuth and the Town of Arlington.
At large, Town of Brookline.
Good morning, Erin Cute, Commissioner of Public Works, representing Town of Brookline.
Inner Core Committee, City of Somerville.
Good morning, all. Tom Bent, City of Somerville, representing Mayor Katiana Ballantyne in the Inner Core.
An advisory group on interlocal town coordination, Town of Ashland.
Good morning, Kristen Guichard, representing Select Board Chair Jim Snyder Grant for the Magic Subregion.
Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
Dennis Giambetti, representing Metro West Region and Mayor Charles Siski.
North Shore Task Force, City of Beverly.
Darlene Wynn, representing Mayor Michael Cahill from Beverly.
North Suburban Planning Council, Town of Burlington.
I do not see Melissa Tentopoulos.
Thank you. South Shore Coalition, Town of Hull.
I do not see Christy Oreo.
Roger. Southwest Advisory Planning Committee, Town of Rentham.
Rachel Benson, representing Joe Botash, Town of Rentham and Swap.
Three Rivers Interlocal Council, Town of Nordwood.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke from the town of Norwood, representing the Trick subregion.
Federal Highway Administration.
Joshua Barber, representing Federal Highway Administration.
Federal Transit Administration.
I do not see any representatives for FTA.
That is the roll. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
You want to circle back and let Jim Fitzgerald from BPDA say he's here?
Absolutely. City of Boston, BPDA.
Hey, Jim Fitzgerald with BPDA representing Mayor Wu in City of Boston. Thanks.
Is there anyone else I have not called? Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I don't have one today, so we'll go directly to the executive director's report. Taken.
Thank you, David, and I'll echo the Happy New Year to everybody. It's nice to see you. This, for my executive director's report today, I will start with engagement updates. So if you could go to the next slide, please. And I'll have a few staff updates actually embedded in these. So first of all, I've mentioned this the last several board meetings, and I think this will be the last time before the survey is closed, but we continue to solicit ideas for new transportation studies and technical assistance projects that we'll consider in the development of the next UPWP. So they would be carried out in the next federal fiscal year to 2025. So as a reminder, we sort of organized our call around certain themes that work towards our long-range goals. And so we're particularly interested in topics related to equity, resilience, safety, and uncertainty. And so again, anyone can submit an idea, and that survey is in the link is in the chat. And Shuleka Murthy is your contact for additional information. I also have some Vision Zero updates, initiative updates. Excuse my cat joining this conversation. We're very thrilled to announce that yesterday, our new principal planner overseeing the Vision Zero initiative started with the agency. So Allie Clayman has returned to the MPO after she has done some excellent work in the interim with some of our partners and board members, the City of Somerville and the MBTA. And she's agreed to rejoin us to take on leadership of the MPO's kind of really new initiative to develop a federally funded Vision Zero action plan to set the roadmap to reaching zero fatalities and serious injuries in the Boston region. So please join us in welcoming Allie back and into this new role. So other updates related to the Vision Zero work is that we have we've received significant interest from stakeholders across the Boston region in both the action plan itself and the task force. And we have selected from those who are interested and invited those selected members to commit themselves to this task force. So they represent a wide range of stakeholders, including municipalities, state agencies, and advocacy organizations. We are planning to hold the first task force in early February. And if you would like to reach out just in the interim, since Allie just started, feel free to continue to use Rebecca Morgan or rmorgan@ctps.org as your contact person. Next slide. So today's agenda, we have a number of action items in addition to the usual meeting minutes. They include 2 work scopes, one being for work being done this federal fiscal year. One is the parking in bike lanes, strategies for safety and prevention, and Kyle Casiglio will be presenting on that work scope. Another will be presented by Ben Dowling, and that is the second phase of the Alston multimodal, I-90 Alston multimodal modeling, second phase of modeling. And then Ethan will present on 2 TIP amendments. One is Amendment 2, which is now a vote to endorse, and the other one is Amendment 4, which will be asking you to vote to release it today for a 21-day public review period. And then next slide, please. So we will have 3 presentations also today. So it will be a slightly longer than usual meeting, but I'm very, I think we'll have a really great conversation about the topics. So the first and longest presentation and discussion item will be the study that we completed called Learning from Roadway Pricing Experiences. So we'll have a nice robust presentation with both Seth Asante and Ryan Hicks presenting parts of that, and then at least 30 minutes of discussion associated with that. Seth will be presenting the case studies, and Ryan Hicks, who's the congestion management process manager, will be framing up the considerations and the next steps for you all as the board to discuss and consider. And I wanted to also pair this with staffing update and a sad news that this will be Ryan's last presentation to the board. So after 12 years with us, he will be departing the agency for a new opportunity in the private sector. But I did want to highlight for the board here that, you know, in these over 12 years, Ryan has really grown the congestion management process and shared his really excellent advanced technical skills, as well as his passion for creating a more equitable region in a variety of projects that he's engaged in. So we've really appreciated the work that he's done for the agency. And I am very happy that before his departure, he does have the opportunity to present on this very important work that he has advocated for and then carried out in partnership with his colleagues. So in addition to participating in this conversation, please join us also in wishing Ryan well in his next endeavor. The other two presentations are also important, but will be a little bit briefer. The first is an update of the federal fiscal year 2023 public engagement activities, and that will be from Stella Jordan. And through that presentation, you'll see really how much work in progress we've made in our engagement activities in the last year and hear about some aspirations going forward. And then we'll also have a short update on the Certification Review Action Plan and our progress over the last quarter or so. And this is really oriented around our desire to maintain transparency in that progress so that we are being responsive to our federal partners' recommendations for improvements in our work. Next slide, please. So the next meeting, it will be on February 1st at 10 a.m. Again, it will be a bit longer as we will have quite a few important topics to cover. So if you can save a bit longer than the 2 hours for the meeting, that would be really helpful and wonderful. And so with that, I will be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chair, that anyone might have.
Thank you, Tegan. Any questions for Tegan? Seeing and hearing none. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment at this time? If so, please raise your hand. I see a public comment from someone who is on the screen as Dan. Dan? Can you unmute him, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It took me a while to get the button to work. Yeah, I'm very concerned lately of some of the bridge work not taking in full consideration of public safety. The Gilmore Bridge alteration that was just done is putting people at risk. We had a guardrail along that section, and now that's been removed. So now people are at risk who are walking along the pathway. But on top of it, the actual extension of the bicycle pathway is now putting other people at risk, the bicyclists, because of the uneven road surface, because of the interaction of the sidewalk space and the road space. There's a disjointment of the two surfaces. We really need to do better.
Thank you, Dan. And the Highway Division is here today, and I'm sure they will take your comments under advisement and check out the situation. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to comment at this time? Also, Dan, I should note that we have just launched a planning study on the longer-term future of the Gilmore Bridge and what we can do there for transit and bicycle and pedestrian improvements. And so if you're interested in that, you should contact my staff. You can just send me a text, an email if you want. David Moeller, I'm Director of Planning. My email is david.moeller, M-O-H-L-E-R, @state.ma.us. Any other public comments at this time? Seeing none. Committee chairs reports, are there any? Derek Cravat.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to update everyone and let folks know we had a good UPWP committee meeting last Thursday. That was January 11th. We heard presentations on performance-based planning and the climate resilience and air quality programs. And we also heard about the UPWP development timeline for the fiscal year 2025 UPWP. I see that the survey for UPWP study ideas has been placed in the chat. So if folks want to check that out, encourage some responses before it closes on February 1st, as Tegan mentioned. And after that time, we'll be meeting again as a UPWP committee to go over the survey results and really kick off the process for development of the next work program for fiscal year 2025. And staff will be in touch to schedule that meeting shortly and notify MPO members when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Any questions for Derek? Seeing none. Tom Bent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The newly formed MOU Update Committee, which was previously the MOU Ad Hoc Committee, had our first meeting Tuesday, January 16th. This committee is tasked with exploring and recommending updates to the Boston Region MPO's Memorandum of Understanding with a target finish month of November of this year. We are excited to report that MOU planning and work is underway, notably to provide a foundation for the rest of our work and welcome new members. We reviewed the federal regulations on MOUs and to address the board and committee's interest in exploring whether other MPOs would be potential models. We received some peer MPO structure and processes as reflected in their MOUs. The committee has proposed a few areas to potentially dive deeper on in order to inform our own MOU updates. The committee also agreed on a work plan of activities over the next 9 months, taking us to October, as well as an engagement plan to inform and gather public comments from municipalities. We're also looking to invite the Cape Ann Transportation Authority and Metro West Regional Transportation Authority to a late February or March committee meeting to talk about RTA representation on the board. MPO staff will be meeting with the RTAs prior to this to help them prepare. In the meantime, staff have already started on the work of proposing text and word changes for the committee's review at an upcoming meeting. The MPO board can expect preliminary staff-led MOU document updates for February 15th and summary updates on conversations with the RTAs in the upcoming months. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to share them. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom? Seeing none. Next item on our agenda is the Regional Transportation Advisory Council report. Len Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week we had a very good meeting, and we did a continued conversation about the universe of 10 projects that was presented by Ethan LaPointe, and we also had a continued discussion about the microtransit, and Mr. Josh, I'm sorry, I'm blanking out his last name, from Newton was with us to talk about NUMO, but also Mr. Nee from Metro West RTA gave us some really interesting updates, or insights into their microtransit programs. Very informative, and our next meeting is going to be on the 24th, and it's an extra meeting, and I want to express how happy I am with my colleagues on the Advisory Council for agreeing to this extra meeting where we're going to talk about we're going to review the resiliency needs in the long-range transportation plan, and we are going to cover the study by Stephen Andrews on flexible bus routes. We cover so much stuff in our meetings here that in order for us to really keep up with it, we need to have an extra meeting. I really want to express my appreciation to my colleagues for accommodating an extra meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn? Seeing none. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes of November 30th. Can I get a motion and a second from a member to approve the minutes? And please state your name for the record when making the motion. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa. I'll make a motion to approve the November 30th meeting minutes.
Brian Kane.
Second.
Motion have been made and seconded. Are there any comments, changes, questions, or suggestions? Seeing and hearing none, please call the roll.
David Muller,
Yes.
John Bishard,
John Bishard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Andy Johnston,
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee,
Sarah Lee, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Ryan Kane,
Kane, yes.
Ken Diggins,
Figures, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Nguyen, Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Sorry, this is Darlene. I had difficulty unmuting. Yes.
no problem, thank you. Tom O'Rourke,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
thank you. Motion carries. Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the work scope for parking and bike lane strategies for safety and prevention. And I believe this is you, Kyle.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Casiglio. I'm a transportation planner with the MPO's multimodal planning and design team. I'm here to share with you our proposed scope of work for project number 14002, parking and bike lane strategies for safety and prevention. So our background is, as municipalities have implemented more bike lanes across the region, it's become more common to encounter people parking motor vehicles in these lanes. This practice creates a hazard for all road users. People who are biking must make a dangerous, unexpected merge into mixed traffic, and as many lanes are not wide enough to accommodate parking, this obstruction may actually impact people utilizing the adjacent travel lane as well. So our scope proposes 4 tasks across a schedule of 6 months from the commencement of work with a budget of $19,998. The first task we're looking at is to research 2 key questions related to this phenomenon. First, why do people park in bike lanes? What is the unmet demand for parking? And secondly, how does this behavior impact the people who utilize that bike lane? So we will answer these questions through a review of the literature, existing data, and stakeholder outreach. Next, we will be looking to identify successful practices to prevent this behavior. So we will conduct a literature review as well as case studies of successful interventions, both within the region and in peer cities, both internationally and nationally. The results of this will be outlined in a report of our findings, along with recommendations for interventions that could be piloted in the Boston region. Our third and fourth task will be the production of a web-based story map documenting the study process, findings, and recommendations, and then the finalization of the aforementioned report and its presentation to the MPO board. So short, sweet, simple study. Thank you for the opportunity to share this with you. Does anyone have any questions I could answer at this time?
Thank you, Kyle. Are there any questions for Kyle? Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Advisory Council is very excited about the study. Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have a sense of who the stakeholders are going to be?
Sure. So we're going to be reaching out to establish connections with bicycle pedestrian advocacy organizations, municipalities, as well. We're going to be looking out for task 1, looking to reach out to groups that we believe may be parking more commonly in bike lanes than others. For example, gig workers in both delivery and transportation services. And beyond that, we'll have to develop a plan of strategically who we want to reach out to.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gina Rowe.
Thank you. I will echo the excitement around studying or beginning to study this issue. In Boston, we certainly observe and receive complaints about parking in our conventional and buffered bike lanes, adding to discomfort many people feel riding in these types of facilities. Of course, we're trying to build out a network of protected, separated facilities, both with some quick build and as well as full build materials. At the same time, it would be excellent to kind of understand a little bit more how we might be able to keep conventional lanes clear. Glenn kind of beat me to the question around kind of the folks who are looking at the stakeholders. And I'm glad to hear that you already have the kind of gig drivers as on that list. We certainly have, at least our assumption is that a decent portion of this activity is kind of at the behest of companies that are somewhat incentivizing this behavior and how they're compensating gig workers. We've also done some analysis ourselves showing delivery companies like the FedExes and UPSs of the world kind of incorporating any fines they might receive for this type of activities and other types of not unlicensed parking activities as part of their cost of business. So we'd love to share that with you as a start. And we'd also ask, and I know this is a very, a smaller budget study, but whether in this or maybe some potential work considering an intercept survey of this drivers that are parked in some of parked in bike lanes, because I think we would be very curious to understand just what proportion of this activity is being generated by these companies. So thank you so much, and looking forward to learning more.
Thank you.
Tom Ben.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with what Len said and what Jen just said, but also in your participants that you're reaching out to, would you be going to different business organizations like Chamber of Commerce's, and then, a lot of like squares have, small business associations, because they may have a pretty good handle as to, what's happening right in front of their businesses. I know, one of the things that's an issue here in Somerville is, parking was taken away, and in front of these small businesses that are convenience store type businesses or, dry cleaners, things like that. The people are pulling up, dashing in, grabbing the quart of milk that their wife just called them to get on the way home, or dropping off the dry cleaning. And, there's a concern with the loss of those spaces, of loss of business and, how to work around that. So there may be some good feedback from some of those organizations that can tell you what maybe they're hearing from their customers too, to help you form an opinion on this.
Thank you. Yes, we would definitely consider the business community and our civic organizations to be valuable partners and stakeholders in this.
Great, thank you.
Brian Kane.
Thanks, David. Kyle, thank you. Just a quick note to encourage you to try to look at the difference between sort of 4-lane roads and 2-lane roads. Seems to me like there's a lot more people just stopping randomly if it's a 4-lane as opposed to a 1 lane in each direction. And there's some weird psychology there that people think that that's acceptable. Anyway. Just wanted to encourage you to do that and look forward to hearing the results from this, Kyle. Thanks.
I'll note that down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is a work scope, so we're not taking public comment, but after we get this vote set, I'll call on you and you can say whatever you deem appropriate. Can I get a motion and a second to approve this work scope as presented today? Brian Kane.
Move to approve.
Motion. Thank you. Lynn Diggins.
Enthusiastic second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll. If you're calling the roll, I can't hear you. So can you hear me?
I can hear you, David.
Okay, is anybody calling? Can you hear anybody calling the roll, Brian?
No, sir. No one's calling the roll.
Could
We hear
someone
you,
please
David.
call the roll?
Sorry. Working on it. There must be some connections issues.
See what happens when we stop recording for a second?
So David, you can do it from memory. Come on. You know it's all
David,
that. Just start with Brian.
David, I'll bet you it'll be unanimous. What do you want to bet?
Hi, Dave. I see your chat, but your audio isn't working. Dave Hong. Can you try again?
We all raise our hand.
Yeah, no, it's
All
not
just say it
working.
together.
No.
Dave, is there an
All right, you
alternate?
ready? You ready? I'm going to call the roll. You ready? David Moeller. Yes. John Bouchard.
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano.
John Romano, yes.
Sarah Lee. Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane.
Surprisingly, I'm a yes.
Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald.
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Back to Lynn Diggins. Sorry, Lynn.
I was about to say you're really good at this, but yes.
Obviously in the right order. Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
Tom Bent.
Tom Bent, yes.
David Kozis.
David Kozis, yes.
Dennis Giambetti.
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
John Alessi.
John Alessi, yes.
Now I'm losing my track of who I've called on. So if I haven't called on you, please raise your hand so I can see you on the screen, and then I will call on you. Darlene Wynn, thank you.
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Melissa Tentaklis.
Melissa Tentaklis, yes.
Kristen Guichard.
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Rachel Benson.
Rachel Benson, yes.
Is there anyone else I've missed?
Sorry, Erin Cute, yes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Motion having been called and all the votes taken, that motion passes. Thank you, Kyle. Next item on, oh, I'm sorry. Is there anybody from the, I cut someone, Seth, I cut you off. Do you want to say anything about this before we move to the next agenda item?
Would love to, thanks. Hi, everyone. Seth Gadbois, Conservation Law Foundation. I'm our Boston transportation attorney. Love the sound of the study. Was just wondering if like blue bike docking locations would be considered in the study, because I think that a lot of people who don't already have a bikes are like going along particular routes and increasing traffic to get to certain kinds of docking stations. So just asking if something like that would be considered in the impacts of this study.
Kyle?
Also, thank you for the opportunity to ask a question.
No worries, Seth. Kyle?
Sorry, if I could just ask for clarification. Do you mean like someone blocking the blue bike station with a vehicle?
I'm just thinking about the impact, like people are more likely to take certain kinds of routes because they have to dock at a blue bike station. So there may be heavier bike traffic near certain docking stations and thus greater impacts for people in the lanes.
Okay, I understand. So yes, we will be looking at the impacts based on amount of traffic. So a particularly busy bike lane that is being consistently blocked would be something we'd be taking into consideration. I don't think that we had singled out blue bike stations in particular for those areas. We are separate from this study working on expanding our bicycle count data. But at this time, I don't think we have robust enough data for the region to really target specific locations like that. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Kyle. Next item on the agenda is the work scope for the I-90 Alston Multimodal Modeling Phase 2. Ben Dowling.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. Good morning. My name is Ben Dowling. I'm a transportation planner with CTPS and the Project Analysis and Applications Group. I am here this morning to present the I-90 Alston Multimodaling Phase 2 scope. The client for this work program will be the MassDOT Highway Division. Funding source will be the MassDOT on-call support contract. And the schedule is to complete the work 7 months from the notice to proceed. The budget for the work is $250,000. This work is being done to support a supplemental draft environmental impact report This work is also being done to help the project team explore metrics and assumptions to better understand the project in the context of the larger transportation network. For those who don't know, the I-90 Alston multimodal project involves rebuilding Interstate 90 in Alston, opening up a swath of land for redevelopment in the process, and the construction of a new commuter rail station on the Worcester-Framingham commuter rail line, as well as other transit improvements. The work under this contract expands upon past work performed by CTPS in support of the Alston I-90 project and Phase 1. CTPS will be providing technical analysis for the project team using the latest travel demand forecasting tool, TDM23. The land use that will be assumed for the analysis was developed by MAPC using their latest tool, UrbanSim, and the land use assumptions were developed in consultation with Harvard University. The networks that will be used, including the transit networks, were developed by MassDOT in consultation with the MBTA. The scope is broken into 6 tasks. The heart of the work will involve a calibrated base year model run, 2 forecast year build runs, one for the so-called 3L realignment, the other for the so-called 3-bridge interchange realignment. 2 tasks under the scope are devoted to metric definition and preparation of results and sensitivity analyses. Under the metric definition task, CTPS will explore how parking costs and levels of work from home activity may affect the project. And under the sensitivity testing task, CTPS will explore how the project may be affected by bus lane scenarios and how different land uses may affect the project. And CTPS will coordinate with the project team through the life of the project. And with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions you may have with regard to the scope.
Thank you, Ben. I do want to just note for the record, Ben omitted to say that the city of Boston was involved in the land use decisions and discussions, as well as Harvard University.
Thank you.
David, thanks, Ben. David Kozis?
Thank you, David. Thank you, Ben. I'm looking forward to seeing the results. I'm just wondering whether a few specific changes are going to be included in the new model, right? First of all, all the recent zoning changes for the MBTA communities, do we know if they've been reflected in the model? And also the commuter rail stations in Newton, which are all of them, still only one-sided platforms and still limited service. Is there, what's the assumption? Is the assumption that they're going to still continue to be limited service? Or are we, how do we decide what the assumption is going to be in the future? Are we assuming they'll be reconstructed? So these are, these assumptions and many others, right? They all reflect, heavily on what the ridership projections are going to be.
Thanks for that question. With regard to the commuter rail service, that the project team will provide CTPS with a schedule for the forecast year, which would include also the level of service for the Newton stops on the Framingham Worcester line. The transit demand isn't going to be sensitive to the station rebuild, or it would be minimally sensitive to that. There may be some sensitivity if the layover at the station is significantly different between the station rebuild, the old station design and the new station design, if that answers your question. In terms of the new zoning for the MBTA, the land use that will be included in the model is for the forecast year will be the land use that was assumed for the LRTP. And so I don't specifically know whether the zoning changes associated with the MBTA law that you're referencing were included in those forecast years. I can look into that for you for sure. But that's sort of that's going to be the land use that's going to be assumed for the model.
Okay, maybe we can follow up a little bit more on that. Also, also I guess related, so the new TAZ, right, that's going to be created, it's based on some future land use and some future development. I guess whatever you're saying, it's whatever is in the LRTP, I think. So maybe that's how, like, I was wondering, how do we decide what particular year to model it on, what particular amount of development, which will, it's going to take decades probably, or years or decades to be fully built out. But so that we're picking a certain time point that's and the certain assumptions that are in the LRTP, you're saying?
So yeah, so the forecast year is 2050. The study area really comprises 4 zones within the model, and so in those 4 zones, that the land use assumptions for those 4 zones were developed in consultation with the city of Boston, as David reminded, and as well as with Harvard University and MAPC, of course. And so for those 4 zones, it's not, the land use will not be identical to the forecast land use that was used for the LRTP. So for those 4 zones, there's been more thought put into the development for that area. Outside of that area, the study area, if you will, the land use that's to be assumed will be the same that was used for the LRTP in the forecast year.
All right, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, David. Other questions? Jim Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reinforce, David, what you said, and Ben, about the collaboration that the city's been involved in developing this work scope. We really appreciate working closely and in the weeds with CTPS and MassDOT and MBTA and CTPS. I think I already said them, MAPC, et cetera. So I think we're really excited to get this work going because it's very important. And we just appreciate being deeply involved throughout in developing the approach to this work.
Other questions from members? Seeing none, Mark Older.
Yes, I'm consulting with a group that's looking at automated transit options for the future. Given that the year involved might be 2050, I'm wondering whether there's any space in the modeling for new or emerging technologies providing transit access in addition to buses.
I think the short answer to that is no. So that the model will assume, as Ben mentioned, will assume transit service as developed by the MBTA and MassDOT. So I don't think this model will assume anything beyond that. Other questions, comments? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to approve the work scope as presented today? And please state your name for the record. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, I'll make a motion to approve the work scope as presented today.
Brian Kane.
Kane seconds.
Motion has been made and seconded. Please call the roll. I've been told that the roll is working, so someone please call the roll.
All right, probably pause with us 1 second while we transition to the other person.
Okay.
We can hear you, Dave.
We can hear? Okay.
Yes.
Jeez. David Muller.
I can barely hear David. So
Yeah, sorry, you're a bit choppy.
yeah. So is there someone other than David who can call this role?
David Muller, do it again. Do it again.
I will offer myself up here, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Aaron. Can you call the roll, please?
Perfect. MassDOT Seat 1.
Yes.
MassDOT Seat 2.
John Bouchard, yes.
MassDOT Highway.
Don Romano, MassDOT Highway, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, MBTA, yes.
Sarah Lee. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, MAPC, yes.
Brian Kane.
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald.
Jim Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis.
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi.
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute.
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent.
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard.
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti.
Dennis Giambetti, yes.
Darlene Wynn.
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Melissa Tintopoulos.
Melissa Tintopoulos, yes.
Rachel Benson.
Rachel Benson, yes.
And Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Thank you. The motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Aaron. Next item on the agenda is tip amendment number 2, Ethan Lapointe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. My name is Ethan Lapointe. I'm the Transportation Improvement Program Manager with the Boston Region MPO. This first item I have today is for Amendment 2 to the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 tip for endorsement after the closure of the public comment period. If we can go on to the next slide, I'll just summarize the contents of Amendment 2 as a refresher. For federal fiscal year 2024, 5, and 6 programs, Amendment 2 proposed the programming of earmarks to design projects in the towns of Arlington, in the case of the Mystic to Minuteman Bike Path Connection, Brookline for the Beacon Street Bridle Path Project, and Dover and Needham for the Center Street / Central Avenue Bridge Design project. It also incorporated the removal of funding in federal fiscal year 2024, specifically regional target funding in the Community Connections Program for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority's on-demand microtransit service expansion project. There were also scheduling changes for CADA to accommodate procurement delays in their trolley replacement project, new funding allocated to a Blue Bikes project that had been previously programmed by the MPO, but did not advance due to contracting delays for Arlington, Newton, and Watertown, and adjustments to the set-aside amount for community connections in federal fiscal years 2025 and 2026 to reflect changes not only made by that Blue Bikes project in Amendment 2, but also through Adjustment 1 and additional community connections projects made there. If we can move on to the next slide, given Amendment 2 was an amendment, there was a 21-day public comment period, which began on December 11th and concluded on January 1st. However, there were no public comments received related to Amendment 2 during that period. With that, if we can go on to the next slide, MPO staff are requesting that the board votes to endorse Amendment 2 and the projects contained within it. And on the next slide, I'm happy to open up the floor to any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ethan? Seeing and hearing none. Can I get a motion and a second to approve this amendment as presented today? Please state your name for the record. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, MAPC. I'll make a motion to approve the amendment as presented today.
Brian Kane.
Kane seconds.
Motion has been made and seconded. Aaron, please call the roll.
David Muller.
Yes.
John Bouchard.
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano.
Don Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston.
Sandy Johnston, yes.
Sarah Lee. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane.
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins.
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald.
Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty.
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis.
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi.
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute.
Aaron Cute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti,
Yes.
Darlene Nguyen,
Darlene Nguyen, yes.
Melissa Tintakis,
Melissa Tintakis, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Thank you. The motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Aaron. Next item on our agenda is amendment number 4, Ethan Lapointe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the second item today, this is Amendment 4 to the Federal Fiscal Years 24 to 28 TIP, which will culminate in a request to release it for a 21-day public comment period. If we can go on to the next slide, and the one following for a summary of the contents of Amendment 4. So for a high-level overview of Amendment 4, there are quite a few line items individually in this that I will go through. There is a cost increase to 1 regional target funded project and 2 statewide highway projects within the Federal Fiscal Years 24 to 28 program. So the changes here will involve multiple years of the TIP. There will also be the acceleration of a project on Route 2 in Acton, Littleton, and Boxborough. There will also be cost revisions to the Interstate 90 at Interstate 495 interchange in Hopkinton, Westboro to account for funding obligations made under the COVID Response and Recovery Appropriations Act, or CRISA. I don't think I got the acronym totally right there, but there are also funding adjustments to 2 Metro West Regional Transit Authority projects, the obligation of, or I should say the programming of carbon reduction funding for the MBTA's Quincy Bus Garage project, and the programming of 2024 Community Transit Grants for Operations, which are grants offered by MassDOT using federal Section 5310 funding. So if we can go on to the next slide, starting off with some changes by program within the statewide highway program here. Or I should say, starting off really with the regional target projects and program. This first project is the regional target project I alluded to earlier, which is Littleton's reconstruction of Foster Street project. This is within the Federal Fiscal Year 24 regional target program, which means it is funded by the MPO and is seeing a cost increase here of approximately 23%, increasing from $5.16 million up to $6.35 million. The reason for this being is that the project recently achieved the Plan Specifications and Estimate stage, or PS&E stage, in December 2023, and as a result, this figure represents the most recent cost estimate for the project. If we can move on to the next slide, we have some similar changes here within the statewide highway program for Federal Fiscal Year 2024. The first one being an interstate pavement preservation and related work project on Interstate 95 in Woburn. This one increasing by 46.27% from about $7.85 million to $11.48 million. Again, here, not only seeing a cost estimate increase following a 75% design submission, but also the reason for this increase being from costs of various inputs and materials on improving the project. The next project is not only a cost increase, but also a change in funding sources. This is in Natick. It is the bridge replacement for Route 27 North Main Street over Route 9 Worcester Street with associated improvements to the interchange there. It's a fairly large project. This is a 14.28% increase, so increasing from $75.68 million up to $86.48 million here. Again, the reason for this is that there is a resubmission of the 25% design, meaning that the 25% design has been modified, and there is also a source change as the project is now entirely funded by a source, which is Highway Investment Program bridge funding. It was previously funded under CRISA funding, which is the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021. More on that later because that also applies to another project. If we can go on to the next slide. And here. So this project is Acton, Boxborough, and Littleton's pavement preservation on Route 2 project, which is seeing an acceleration, meaning that it is moving up a year. This project is moving into Federal Fiscal Year 2024 as it has recently achieved 100% design, and the cost is being adjusted not necessarily because the scope of work has changed, but because there is the omission of a 4% per year inflation factor. So the project is currently in Federal Fiscal Year 2025 with a budget of about $7.87 million. It is now in Federal Fiscal Year 2024 with a budget of $7.56 million, The difference there being because that 4% per year inflation factor is no longer applicable. If we can move on to the next slide, we have some fairly significant changes, again involving that CRISA funding for the Hopkinton-Westboro reconstruction of the Interstate 90, Interstate 495 interchange project. There are changes to this project across all 4 years in which it is currently in the status of advanced construction within the federal fiscal years 2024 to 28 TIP. The broad overarching reason for all of these changes is that the advanced construction schedule for the project has been adjusted in order to account for obligations already made to the project, funding that has been committed to it already, through that federal coronavirus response and relief funding there. In federal fiscal year 2025, there's a very slight reduction in the overall budget here, about 0.1%. It is decreasing from $83.8 million down to $83.72 million there. It's a decrease of $80,801. In federal fiscal year 2026, there's another budget decrease from $74.77 million down to $66.63 million. This is a 10.88% decrease. In federal fiscal year 2027, there is another decrease by a much more substantial amount from $43.57 million down to $18.76 million, a 56.94% decrease in that 1 year. And in federal fiscal year 2028, the entirety of the funding of that year, which is $777,064, has been removed. All in all, this project began or is currently programmed in the TIP with a budget of $202.92 million, and its new budget following Amendment 4 would be $169.11 million. The net decrease in the project's budget here is $33.80 million, or a 16.66% decrease to reflect that existing obligation of funding under CRISA. If we can move on to the next slide, we can start talking about some additional projects for the Metro West Regional Transit Authority within the federal fiscal year 24 to 25 transit programs here, starting off in federal fiscal year 24 only. So for the first MWRTA project, there is a vehicle replacements project for 6 compressed natural gas vehicles, which is a funding shift and a cost decrease. The funding source for this project has been adjusted in order to utilize Federal Transit Administration Section 5307 funding, and the budget has been reduced as a result based on the availability of that funding to be allocated to the project. It is currently in the TIP for $1.93 million down to $1.11 million. This is about a 42.54% decrease. For the MWRTA's Blandon Hub projects, the Blandon Hub being the MWRTA's main service hub within Framingham, the current budget of the project is $30 million and is being moved out of federal fiscal year 2024. The reason why this is happening is not because there is currently a capital project programmed for federal fiscal year 2024, but rather that the policy for regional transit authorities is to indicate intent from regional transit authorities should they wish to pursue FTA discretionary funding in that federal fiscal year. That is not the case for the Blandon Hub projects. The project is moving to federal fiscal year 2025 as far as when that is being pursued there. That would be using discretionary FTA Section 5339 funding. And if we move on to the next slide, you can see this reflected in which the MWRTA will be pursuing this funding in federal fiscal year 25 with $30 million of funding for the project there in that year. We can move on to the next slide. We then move on to some MBTA projects within federal fiscal year 2024. This one being the Quincy Bus Facility Modernization Project, which is a new project. I should say that this is new to the TIP, but it is an existing project within the MBTA's capital investment plan, and this is supplementary to that funding there. The total budget for this project is $25,689,014, of which $20,551,211 is Federal Highway Administration carbon reduction formula funding, which is being sent over to the MBTA in order to support the modernization of the Quincy bus facility. The difference there of about $5.14 million reflects the matching contribution by the MBTA to this line item. And if we go on to the next slide, we have a series of community transit grant awards for the Mobility Management and Operating Assistance Program offered by MassDOT using Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 funding which is intended for seniors, persons with disability, to improve mobility. We've organized these starting off with some of the Regional Transit Authority related awards here. CATA, for the Cape Ann Transportation Authority, received an award of $58,854, matched in kind with $58,854 of their own funding for a dialysis and medical van project. The MBTA received $200,000 with $53,000 in match for the development of a virtual tool for travel training and information to assist their mobility center travel training program. We do have a revision here for this next project. This is the Metro West Regional Transit Authority Transitions and Outreach Program, or TOP, which empowers populations to use MWRTA services. This project was initially programmed and presented on the tables for this amendment as a $100,000 award with $25,000 of match. That was very recently revised. This is now a $180,000 award with $45,000 in match. The total line item for this project is now $225,000 instead of the $125,000 reflected on screen here. The next MWRTA project is the Weekend Catch Connect Framingham and Natick support. This is additional funding from the Community Transit Grant Program to support ongoing work funded by not only the MWRTA, but also in part the MPO, to extend the service hours for their Catch Connect microtransit service using a $250,000 community transit grant and $51,842 in matching funds there. We can move on to the next slide. We also have another Catch Connect related grant, but this time for a municipal project proponent, this being in Sudbury for the Go Sudbury Catch Connect shuttle here, a $74,865 award, which will improve mobility for older adults and residents with disabilities in Sudbury by expanding that Catch Connect service into their community in partnership with the MWRTA. Similarly, this next line item, which is the Mass 211 Incorporated MassDOT Access Program, is a collaboration between MassDOT and the Metro West Regional Transit Authority to provide taxi rides for seniors and persons with disabilities in Framingham with an award amount of $49,500. The Irish Pastoral Center has also received an award for improving access for low-income seniors and others in Greater Boston in the amount of $125,000, which will improve the establishment of a mobility management program by the center. In Hull, there is the Navigating with Ease, Confidence, and Convenience project, a $4,720 award, which will provide technical and travel training for older adults in Hull. And Lexington's Lexpress bus service received a $200,000 grant award for continued funding to support that service. I should note before we move on to the next slide, as you may see on screen here, some of these projects here under their funding source have what is the ETF Fair Share item. This represents funding that was allocated under the Fair Share Amendment recently for these projects that comes in addition to other funding sources under the community transit grants here. We can move on to the next slide. We have Newton's Senior Transportation Operating Support Project in federal fiscal year 2024. This is actually related to Newton's NUMO, Newton in Motion microtransit service that the MPO is funding, and provides a $190,000 grant award to support on-demand rides for seniors and persons with disabilities. Greater Lynn Senior Services has their Move Safe Mobility Links project, which received a $115,960 grant award with $28,990 coming from other sources in order to support mobility and travel training for older adults and persons with disability on the North Shore. Similarly, there is also the Mystic Valley Elder Services Mobility Management Program, a $96,834 grant award with a $24,209 other non-federal funding allocation from other sources programmed here to provide transportation for older adults north of Boston. Needham has a transportation program award of $48,600 to support on-demand transportation for individuals in and around Needham. On the next slide, there is the SCM, or the Somerville Cambridge Medford Community Transportation Senior and Disabled Persons Transportation Award of $36,000 here. It supports salaries for drivers to give rides to older adults in Somerville, Cambridge, and Medford. Somerville and Cambridge have a separate award for elder services funding, which is $75,600 in the community transit grant funding, $1,500 in other federal funds that this nonprofit has received, and $17,400 from other non-federal sources to provide administrative support to older adults in those communities for mobility services. Similarly, Brookline has received a $100,000 award for its senior center to expand its transportation programs for streamlined service, and Dedham's Council on Aging received a $25,134 award to support the expansion of transportation operations for seniors. And on to the next slide. In Marblehead, there is an access to medical care in surrounding towns line item of $45,000 to continue transportation operations for the Council on Aging. Acton for Mobility Management has a $32,000 community transit grant award with $8,000 in local match for the procurement of a consultant for a strategic transportation plan for its multi-town Crosstown Connect system. And on the subject of Crosstown Connect, the next line item is a $100,000 community transit grant award with $100,000 in local matching funds to maintain shared dispatch for Crosstown Connect in Acton. North Reading has a public transit pilot program to expand driver service hours and increase capacity of their existing, largely volunteer-based program with 2 vans on the road, and support the usage of TNCs or transportation network companies when their drivers are unavailable to provide service. And we then have North Reading's Transportation Hotline. This is an $85,000 project in total, $68,000 of which is community transit grant, $17,000 being local match, for the creation of a call center and hiring of a transportation coordinator to connect residents with transportation options. With that, I believe if we go on to the next slide, MPO staff are requesting that the board votes to release Amendment 4 and all of the projects contained therein for a 21-day public comment period. Comment would be commencing starting next week on January 22nd, with the conclusion of the comment period being February 12th, 2024. With that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ethan. Any questions for Ethan? Lynn Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a quick question, Ethan, on the cost change on the, I think it's, I'm sorry, get on my deck here. It's the one that had like a 40%, 46% increase. You know what I'm talking about? It's a state highway.
The Woburn Interstate 95 pavement preservation project?
Yeah. So just to get some possible insights, into what may happen with some of the projects in the TIP universe. Do you have any more insights as to the cause for the increases? I know it went from 25 to 75%, but was there anything in there that popped out that the short answer is no, that's fine.
Based on the information I have, I believe what was indicated in that case was in cost increases for materials there. With regard to any other projects, that information will be provided after TIP readiness days at the start of February. So for anything else programmed in the TIP.
Okay, well, it's just that one I wanted to maybe see if they had any insights as to maybe what we might expect from other projects. That's it. Thank you.
Jim Fitzgerald.
Thank you. So Len kind of stole my same line of questioning, but just curious if it sounds like it was materials rise, and are we confident that the Route 2 pavement item is budgeted accurately as well? Just, trying to make sure we're avoiding such drastic increases. I know it's not target funds, but we do have the 25% kind of reevaluation threshold for target fund projects, but
I may need to defer to the Highway Division with regard to questions on project readiness for that specific contract. However, the funding amount that is being programmed in this amendment reflects the latest estimate that is available in our central financial system for the TIP. So,
other questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion and a second to release this amendment as presented today? And please state your name for the record. Eric Barassa.
Eric Barassa with MAPC. I'll make a motion to release the amendment as presented today for public comment.
Thank you. Is there a second? Lynn Diggins.
Diggins will second it.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
David Moeller,
Yes.
John Bouchard,
John Bouchard, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Sandy Johnston,
Yes.
Sarah Lee, Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Brian Kane,
Kane, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe,
Rowe, yes.
Jim Fitzgerald,
Fitzgerald, yes.
Jay Monty,
Jay Monty, yes.
David Kozis,
David Kozis, yes.
John Alessi,
John Alessi, yes.
Aaron Shute,
Aaron Shute, yes.
Tom Bent,
Tom Bent, yes.
Kristen Guichard,
Kristen Guichard, yes.
Dennis Giambetti, Darlene Wynn,
Darlene Wynn, yes.
Melissa Tantaklis,
Melissa Tantakos, yes.
Rachel Benson,
Rachel Benson, yes.
Tom O'Rourke.
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
Thank you. The motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is roadway pricing experiences. Seth Asante and Ryan Hicks.
Quick question. Sorry,
Yes,
David.
Melissa, I'm sorry.
My chat is not working. Is that the case for everyone else, or is that just something on my end?
I don't know. Does anybody else know?
It says it's disabled.
I apologize, Melissa. That should work for you now.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There we go. Seth,
Thank you.
Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Seth Asante, MPO staff. I'm a transportation planner in the multimodal planning and design team. The Boston Region MPO elected to fund this study in federal fiscal year 2023. This study reviewed roadway pricing strategies and implementation across the United States. Ryan Hicks and I will present the study findings. According to INRIS, a transportation analytics firm, Boston was ranked the second most congested city in the United States in 2022. And this highlights the importance of the study, as roadway pricing is one of the strategies that can be applied to manage congestion and address the environmental concerns that result from congestion. Next slide, please. This presentation will be in two parts. In part one of the presentation, we will review the 5 case studies, how they were created and implemented, and their intended goals and benefits. Part one will be followed by a brief questions and answers period about the case studies. In part two of the presentation, we will discuss the lessons learned from the case studies, MPO roles, and implications for the Boston region. Part two will be followed by a longer discussion period for the board to further discuss the work, the implications for the Boston region, and the next steps. Next slide, please. Next slide. Roadway pricing falls into 2 categories: road tolls and usage charges, and congestion pricing. Road tolls and usage charges do not address congestion, but raise revenue to pay for transportation bonds and improvement projects. Congestion pricing applies higher user tolls on congested facilities during peak periods to influence travel demand. In short, congestion pricing charges drivers more during times of high congestion and less during times of low congestion. There are several types of congestion pricing strategies. Cordon pricing, which tolls drivers that enter designated areas. Variable pricing, which charges all drivers higher fees for traveling during peak periods. express lane pricing, which charges drivers for using express lanes to get to their destinations faster, high occupancy toll lane pricing, which allows single occupant vehicles to pay tolls to use HOV lanes, target road user tolls that toll specific vehicles, such as trucks or transportation network provider vehicles, and parking and curbing pricing that prices parking and curb spaces based on demand. Next slide, please. After an extensive search of federal and state DOT, city and MPO websites, MPO staff identified 13 roadway pricing programs for initial evaluations. These are the states and cities where the 13 programs are located. Information on each of the 13 programs, including the goals, tolling policy, challenges, opportunities, lessons to be learned, and MPO roles, were assembled for discussion at the Congestion Management Process Committee workshop. MPO staff used feedback from the workshop to inform the development of selection criteria for the case studies. The states with the orange color are the locations of the 5 case studies selected for interviews. Next slide, please. These are the selection criteria for the case studies that the program was recommended by the Congestion Management Process workshop participants. The program goals also align with the goals of the Boston Region MPO Long Range Transportation Plan. The program allows for ease of implementation in the Boston region. Environmental assessments were completed for the program, including addressing transportation equity concerns. And the program also provides opportunities, challenges to learn from and understand how they were implemented. Next slide, please. These are the 5 case studies. The Chicago Transportation Network Provider Surcharge imposes surcharge on transportation network provider trips such as Uber and Lyft to and from downtown Chicago. This program was implemented in 2019 and requires no equipment installation. The TMP companies collect the fees for the city. The high occupancy toll lanes in Minneapolis and St. Paul allow single occupant vehicle drivers to pay to use HOV lanes. The program was implemented in 2005 and requires hot lane conversions, adding new express lanes, tolling equipment installation, and roadway infrastructure. The Central Business District tolling program in New York City is expected to toll drivers entering Manhattan's Central Business District. The program was planned in 2019 to fund the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's capital projects. It is anticipated to go into operations this year. This program requires no expansion or widening of roadways, only toll equipment installations. The Bay Area Express Lane program in San Francisco tolls drivers that use express lanes to get to their destination faster. The program has been in operation since 2010 and requires HOV lane conversions, adding new express lane, toll equipment installation, and roadway infrastructure. And finally, the Washington, D.C. Parking Demand Pricing Program, which sets parking rates based on demand. This program has been in operation since 2016 and was implemented to improve customer parking efficiency and experience. Next slide, please. All 5 cases require legislation authorizing implementation and revenue uses. In Minneapolis and St. Paul, state legislation authorized the congestion pricing program and specified revenue uses. Excess revenue after capital operations and maintenance costs to support capital projects and bus transit improvements. In New York City, state legislation authorized the tolling program and specified that revenue be used for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's capital projects. The program was approved through the state budget due to shortfalls and the need to generate revenue for transportation investments. In San Francisco, state legislation authorized the regional transportation agencies, in cooperation with Caltrans, the state DOT, to implement pricing programs and use revenue to manage congestion and improve express bus services. Local legislation were also used to authorize roadway pricing. In Chicago, City Council legislation authorized the transportation network provider surcharge and revenue uses. And in Washington, D.C., the D.C. Council legislation permitted the parking demand pricing program. Next slide, please. Roadway pricing strategies can support multiple regional goals. Direct goals include reducing congestion and generating revenue for transportation investments. The indirect goals are supporting economic vitality and competitiveness, air quality and safety improvements. Reducing congestion gets people and goods to their destinations on time reliably and support economic vitality. Reducing congestion also leads to reduced pollution and energy consumption, supporting air quality improvements. Generating revenue to support transit and active transportation, such as walking and biking, also move more people, provide more travel options, and address transportation equity concerns. All the 5 case studies were implemented to reduce congestion and support economic vitality. Generating revenue for transportation improvements were the intended goals in the New York City, Chicago, and San Francisco case studies. Next slide, please. In Chicago, the surcharge was reduced by 50% in transportation equity communities that are not well served by the existing public transportation. And this helped distribute ground transportation more equitably. Part of the revenue generated also went to the Chicago Transit Authority to support transit. This program did not reduce congestion because the surcharge was low, and there was opposition from the public and politicians from raising the surcharge. In Minneapolis and St. Paul, the hot lane program reduced congestion, improved travel reliability. Excess revenue were spent equally on the corridor and bus transit enhancements. In New York City, the program is expected to provide about $1 billion of new funding sources every year, and portion of this will be allocated to the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's capital project. The program is expected to reduce congestion, energy consumption, and improve air quality. In San Francisco, the program reduced congestion, improved travel times and air quality, and also supported express bus service. And in Washington, D.C., the program increased parking availability and use of low-demand parking spaces. It also reduced congestion and encouraged travel by transit and bicycles during the peak travel periods. Part of the revenue generated from the program is allocated to the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority to support transit. I will pause here and pass it back to the chair to facilitate the initial discussion section to answer questions about the case studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. So as we've set this up, we're going to discuss now the case studies and Seth's work on the case studies. And then I think Ryan Hicks will take us through a short presentation on where do we go from here, what's next for the MPO. So are there any questions on the actual case studies and what Seth found? Brian Kane.
Thanks, David. Just wanted to say great job, Seth. I think the case studies you chose were spot on. I think focusing both on hot lanes as well as parking, as well as sort of congestion. I think you got a good mix of different approaches that are being tried in the U.S., and I think this will generate some very interesting data. I'm fascinated by what they're doing in Chicago with surcharge reductions and increases based on to sort of improve equity. I think that's something we should really look at, and just sort of really can't wait to hear what the studies come back with. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. Melissa Tintakoulis.
Sorry, was my hand still up?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. My mistake.
Sorry.
Jinro.
Yeah, so thanks again. Really fascinating work. I found it interesting seeing the range of goals that and which ones were kind of pursued in the different areas. I appreciated the reports finding that the wisdom of kind of focusing more on the benefits with reducing congestion, increasing mobility, and improving air quality over focusing more on the revenue side of why the reason for doing roadway pricing. One question I had was, I thought there was, I think, a couple areas, including DC, did call out specifically safety benefits, and certainly I can see that reducing single occupancy vehicle trips could enable our engineers to be able to allocate more roadway space and signal time to protecting vulnerable users. But I guess one piece that I didn't see mentioned, I was curious if this came up at all, is whether roadway pricing efforts have ever been used to help regulate or incentivize deliveries, especially those made by tractor trailers or other large trucks, to making those deliveries at locations and times of day when they'd be less likely to come in conflict with vulnerable road users. I know in Boston, we've seen an alarming trend of fatalities and serious injuries that have involved heavy vehicles. And so we'd be really curious of whether something like this could play a role in our Vision Zero efforts.
Seth?
Thank you. That's a great question. In Washington, D.C., the parking demand pricing program was not only meant for automobile, only like public parking spaces, but it includes also commercial parking spaces. And both parking spaces, whether curbside or delivery side, were all priced based on time of day and location. For instance, for commercial parking, they allocated spaces where deliveries can go and park. And all those locations were also priced according to the time of the day. If it's during peak periods, delivery vehicles will pay more. And they also monitored the delivery spaces to make sure that cars do not park there and they serve the intended purpose, because their program, they wanted it also to support economic vitality and the business in the area. And they work very much, incorporated the businesses into the stakeholder talks. So they involve them, getting their opinions how to plan and deliver this project. So in the nutshell, they also included curb spaces for commercial vehicles, in addition to private automobiles parking in parking spaces. So both were considered.
Thank you, Seth. Eric Barassa.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I just want to say, Seth, good job with this. One of the things you highlight, one of the challenges you highlight, in this study is this idea that in order for congestion pricing to really change behavior, the price has to be high enough that it does that. And you note that politically that can be very challenging, that can be very difficult. And I think I'd like to just throw out, as you all think of next steps for this research and how to bring some of this more locally to the sort of the greater Boston context. One area might be to explore kind of what would that price be to influence behavior change. And it'd be also very interesting, I don't know if you have this in the report, if you could identify what are some of the price ranges in some of these other cities. I think that would be really interesting to see that. But understanding more what would it take to change behavior, I think is an important thing to dig into further to better understand how politically feasible some of these things could be.
So Eric, I think that is going to be part of the discussion of our next part of this presentation. So
okay.
Hold that comment for after Ryan's presentation.
Okay, perfect.
Any others at this time to discuss this case studies? Seeing none, Josh Ostroff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'd be remiss in not thanking the MPO for supporting this initiative, having been here in other roles over the years, urging us to do this. It's so important that we get this objective, fact-based learning to help inform future policy decisions. So I'm very grateful to Seth for leading this effort, for the team that's worked on it. And yeah, I, like you, look forward to the other, to the rest of the discussion. How can this be implemented? How can we apply the lessons here in Eastern Massachusetts in a way that really advances all of the goals that are, there's almost none of these that are not important to the region. So just my thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. J.R. Fry.
Yes, and hopefully you can hear me okay. I was curious
whether these other studies were restricted to a particular inner core or how far they spread into the suburbs, and whether there were also corresponding incentives. For instance, MBTA received some amount of money through lot revenue. Could that be offset by the travel charges or by the roadway charges, and kind of be revenue neutral to MBTA, but incentivize people to utilize the transit system?
Okay. Yeah, I will start with the first question about locations of this study. In the Washington, D.C., a lot of input went into selecting the location for the parking study. It was located in an area where they were experiencing double parking, and this was causing safety concerns and also not helping to utilize low demand parking spaces. And also the district was looking at available technology that will help them to decide how to make customer experience, parking experience, improve that. So they look at a lot of factors, and then they focused in the downtown area where they feel the program will have more impact. In Chicago, the program was also located in downtown Chicago, and they have a cordon for that. They selected the area because the city did an analysis of transportation network provider trips going to the city of Chicago. And they find out that there was a dramatic increase in the trips going to the city center, causing congestion and stuff. So they have an area where they feel most of the trip went. And even in the downtown area, they have two zones. Special zones like airport area and well-visited areas has higher charges than other locations in the downtown area. So a lot of studies and input will have to go in to decide where to locate the program. And the same thing applies to New York City. Their program, if you travel below 60th, I think it's 60th Street or Avenue, something like that, then you have to pay the fee. But I think maybe in the next section, we can talk about some of the implication. I don't want to give a lot, which will kind of eat into the second portion, but a lot of studies goes in to decide where the study should be located.
Thank you, Seth. Now let's go on to Ryan. Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you, David. Thank you, Seth. Excellent presentation. Now we're going to move on from talking a lot about the case studies to talking about what the MPO's role could be and what the MPO's and other cities' roles were with implementing roadway pricing. And we'd like to talk about next the lessons learned with roadway pricing and also the next steps with roadway pricing in the Boston region. The New York Metropolitan Transportation Council is the MPO for the New York City region. And they had a prominent role with New York's current congestion pricing program, with the stated to be implemented later on this spring. They focused on modeling toll rates such as vehicles miles traveled, mode shifts, congestion reduction, and diversion effects in the outer boroughs in particular, with different tolling scenarios. Secondly, they looked at the analysis of potential effects on traffic conditions, transit usage, parking, pedestrians, and bicycle usage. And in addition to that, they had very traditional roles as well as an MPO. For example, congestion pricing had a strong presence in their last long-range transportation plan. In addition to that, the congestion pricing program that is going to be implemented later on this year is present in their 2023 to 2027 tip. Next slide. Now, the San Francisco's MPO is very unique. The Metropolitan Transportation Council has the ability to actually do operations as well as traditional MPO roles. The main catalyst of the Bay Area Express Lanes came through the Metropolitan Transportation Council's 2035 Transportation Plan. And what that plan, which was released in 2009, what that plan evaluated was scenario analyses, such as congestion strategies, express lanes, determine whether what is the best solution. Would it be express lanes or would it be hot lanes? Would express bus enhancements, for example? They also looked at benefits such as congestion and vehicle miles traveled reductions, greenhouse gas emissions, and crash reductions as well. And then one very prominent thing was that they worked with the state of California to form legislation that over the last 20 years that allowed them to operate roadway facilities and even collect tolls and allocate revenue from the use of the toll facilities. Next slide. So there's a multitude of opportunities when implementing roadway pricing programs. However, I'm going to mention three big ones. The big opportunity is it'll allow us to fund more sustainable modes of transportation, such as transit, public transportation, and also active transportation, such as bicycle and pedestrian facilities, which will give people another option to commute. It will change our behavior and allow for a more healthy commutes for a lot of people that are going to work and going shopping, for example. And it will encourage mode shift to other modes. And in addition to that, it can also encourage people to consider, if they have the choice, not commuting during the peak period hour when roadways and transportation facilities are congested, and move their commute to the off-peak period. And then the third thing is it can really support economic vitality through reduced congestion as well. Next slide. Now, there were multiple challenges that many of the 5 programs that Seth mentioned before experience with implementation and operations as well. A big thing, which was a concern that was brought up during the earlier discussion, was balancing equity concerns with revenue collection. Oftentimes, you have to walk a tightrope with this because it's strongly encouraged to give out concessions and discounts to equity populations, and is needed. However, the more that you give as far as discounts, that does increase the price of the tolls for everyone else. So there has to be a balancing act with that. And many of the programs have had issues with that, with implementation. And one of the issues is getting political buy-in. With the high toll, it's kind of harder for local and even state politicians to get political buy-in with the program. So that will be a challenge that could arise as well. and also public acceptance. What normally happens with public acceptance is usually public acceptance nosedives right before a project or program is being implemented. However, when people see the benefits and actually experience the benefits shortly after it's implemented, people like the programs traditionally. Most, if not all, of these programs that we stated are very, very popular locally. Mitigating traffic diversions is always going to be a problem. There's always going to be people who try to get around paying tolls by cutting through adjacent neighborhoods to roadway pricing facilities. And that's something that we'll have to monitor over time. And then also navigating state and federal statutes is always being a challenge. In some cases, new legislation would be needed. Building interagency collaboration is very important that the state DOT, the transit operators, MPOs, and local governments as well work together for a roadway pricing project to succeed. Next slide. Now, these next 7 things I'm going to mention are lessons learned. In order for a roadway pricing to be successful, it must have these features. The first thing is that all 5 of these programs that we looked at, they require legislation. That is very important, whether it's state legislation or local legislation. The second thing is we have to emphasize engagement with the EJ community and also underrepresented communities very, very early in the process. This is very crucial for the success of a program. For example, the congestion pricing program that will be implemented in New York later on this year, they actually did a really good job of getting the EJ community involved early and often, and they're offering discounts and concessions to each of these communities. The next thing is that it's very good to show that revenue uses are very beneficial, transparent, and linked to transit and active transportation infrastructure improvements. This is very important because if people know where their money is going, they're going to support a roadway pricing project because they'll see that it benefits them. The Minnesota Department of Transportation hot lanes did a really good job of showing where revenue was going, indicating that 50% of its excess revenue will be going to transit improvements. And the fourth thing is, and this is very, very, very important, if your transit system does not have the capacity to accommodate the extra trips, it's very important to pair pricing programs with transit and active transportation modes. It's very important to have maybe a new day one public transportation line to give people another option to commute in rather than simply relying on them having to pay a new toll just to commute the traditional way. Next slide. The next thing is it's very important to focus on goals and benefits rather than revenue, especially and it's especially important to have transparency around support and data. And the Chicago Transportation Network Provider program did a very good job of that. They actually have a dashboard where the public could go onto the dashboard and actually see how congestion is doing, how congestion has improved, and how successful the program is. The next thing is to constantly evaluate your program to maintain the effectiveness of a pricing project. The New York congestion pricing program that's upcoming is planning on doing a very good job of this. They're planning on doing before and after studies. They're planning on evaluating vehicle emissions both before and after, looking at traffic, both before and after the project is implemented in the New York region, and then also looking at revenue streams as well. And then the last thing is it's very important to have adequate and specialized staff. It's very important to have an economist on your staff. It's very important to have a data scientist on your staff to look and see how the data's, how everything's going and how successful the program is. Next slide. So next, I'll briefly go over the takeaways from the CMP committee workshop. We had a CMP committee workshop on August 17th, 2023. And at the workshop, there were 2 questions that were asked to the attendees. Number 1 was, what LRTP goals does roadway pricing relate to? And then the second question was, what goals should roadway pricing accomplish? And the feedback that we received from the committee workshop was that all the goals that are related to roadway pricing relate to economic growth and can result in economic growth. For example, if we're able to shift modes, it enables people to experience better commutes who don't have many choices during the AM and PM peak period, for example. If people's commutes are more reliable, they're gonna go more places, and they're gonna contribute more to the economy. And then it's very, very important that equity communities have as many options as possible as well, so they can get to their jobs, they could get to their doctor appointments, they could get to their shopping needs as well. And then this could be used as a tool to maybe bring in even more revenue to fund even bigger projects as well. Next slide. So there's several potential next steps that the Boston MPO and other agencies in the Boston region can do to potentially promote roadway pricing. The first thing is it'll be very important to conduct a stakeholder analysis. Number 1, there should be a list of potential stakeholders who might have influence on what a roadway pricing project will look like within the Boston region. Maybe it's even a good idea to form a stakeholder working group where we could get the stakeholders together and the stakeholders could share opinions on how they feel about roadway pricing. The second thing is, and I can't emphasize this more, we have to engage the equity and traditionally underrepresented populations now. If you do that, you'll get more buy-in and you'll get more trust from the community. So that, and more support overall from your program. The next thing is, it's very important to identify pricing strategies that are most technically feasible. The Boston region might not be suitable for a port and pricing project right away. We don't know. It's important that we evaluate these things to figure out what is suitable. Maybe the situation is we start small with similar to how Washington D.C. did with a parking pricing program, and use that revenue to build a bigger program. That can be an option as well. But we don't know these things, so we need to evaluate different pricing strategies, because there's so many things we could do with roadway pricing. The next thing is we also need to workshop these goals to the full MPO board, which is what we're doing now, and develop some policy frameworks. What will be the role of roadway pricing in our MPO programs? Will there be goals in our next LRTP? Will there be even tip criteria that could potentially evaluate projects and fund projects based on if they have elements of roadway pricing or not? And then the last thing is we have to develop concepts for scenarios that could be analyzed for the next LRTP. We have a new model, the TDM 23 model, that has the potential to analyze different roadway pricing projects. So it's very important to look at that and look at multiple scenarios to see how it will impact the Boston region. And maybe it might be a situation where only certain locations of the Boston region might have a program or need a program, that sort of thing. So now I'm going to turn it back to the chair to continue the facilitation of the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Lynn, you got your hand up?
Oh, yes, I do, Mr. Chair. So this is very exciting. First off, Ryan, thank you very much. Gonna miss you a lot. Hopefully you'll find your way back to us, like Jen Rowe and Allie Clayman and Sandy Johnson. So hopefully this isn't a long goodbye, but it's been a pleasure working with you. And my regret is now that maybe you won't be able to meet with the advisory council. We were hoping to meet with you on the 24th, but I was advised that staff wanted us to delay this discussion about this meeting a little bit more. So anyways, look, I think we need to be really more expansive in the way we think about pricing things, not so much for congestion, but how we price access to the entire transportation network. And with that, we can try to achieve lots of different goals. Not only mitigation of congestion, but more importantly, how do we make it possible for people to access the transportation network in an equitable way, with an emphasis on people who have low income, because we certainly don't want to implement any kind of policy or pricing mechanism that is regressive. And so I encourage us to think very large about this, and let the politicians worry about the politics. As someone who has a handle, has a hand in that world, it's kind of depressing sometimes when other entities, who aren't politicians, are kind of low ambition in what they present because they're concerned. It's like we need the full range of options. And as Monica Tibbetts encouraged me, it's like the leaders need to lead. And so with more information, those of us in a position to make policy, will have the knowledge that we need, the information we need to hopefully make better policies. And so another thing to respect to public engagement, I think when it comes to developing, pricing schemes, it'd be great to bring the public into the mix, especially using our public engagement plan, which we'll hear about later, and get some ideas like how could we price access to the transportation network, so that it begins to function, like a transit network and a freight network. So I could go on, but I'm going to stop for now. But I'm really excited about this, and I hope we move forward in a very ambitious way. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Christine Guichard.
Hi, I also just want to say thank you so much. This has brought up so many different questions that I have, and maybe I can just send an email with some of them. But I think I'm definitely interested in having the MPO do follow-up studies, and specifically, about the equity lens. And I think what came to mind the most is, we obviously share some of the similar issues that other metropolitan areas do, with housing being so expensive that people tend to travel from much further out, therefore creating a lot of congestion issues. And so wanting to make sure that, whatever we do is looking at making sure that there are still opportunities for those individuals that are commuting in to not increase their costs if they're already experiencing a financial burden. And I'm not sure what that would look like, if it's something phased, trying to focus on locations that have the most reliable alternative transportation opportunities, because I think that's obviously one of our other challenges, that if we're trying to get people off the road, we have to make sure that they have a reliable way to get to work and get their kids to daycare or pick them up if they're sick and that sort of thing. So anyway, I think this is really great and important work, and just want to say thank you. And I would be interested in, again, looking at that equity lens and keeping the housing crisis kind of in mind and how that plays into it.
Thank you. Jay?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. First, I want to say, Brian, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you over the past. I've been here 9 years now, so I've worked with you for most of your time here, and I think this really is your one of your finest pieces of work. I'm really glad that I'm sad to see you leave, but I'm glad to see you get to leave on such a high note with this. I think this is a great piece of study and effort and work, and I'm sad you won't be here to continue with it because I think there's so much more to go with this and so much more to explore. So thank you, and I hope we stay in touch and hope you come back. I guess I can think of a lot of comments, a lot of questions, but I'll pick one, and that is as we think about ways in which different places have implemented this, or ways in which Boston might, or the Boston metro region might implement this, we start to need to think about the mechanics at the agency level, multiple agency level, right? Of how we prioritize, like as you said, if people need to see immediate improvements in order to get buy-in. And so, what does that look like when you give the T or another agency funding from this, and how do we ensure that that money goes to specific things that would provide those improvements and give that positive perception. So I think there's a huge amount of maybe additional follow-on, right, that could look at those kind of almost micro mechanics. And as New York, implements their version of this, which I think is probably the most comprehensive version we have in this country or will have, there's going to be a lot to learn. So hopefully in the future we can look at it that way as well as we kind of move this forward. But again, it's been a pleasure, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Chair.
Brian?
Thank you. Ryan, please accept my congratulations as well, and understanding that you'll be missed. I just wanted to note, and maybe I should have said this during Seth's part of the presentation. Before we go down this huge rabbit hole of looking at all these technological solutions, it seems to me that the Commonwealth every year inspects my car via the sticker process and theoretically notes how many miles it's traveled. And theoretically, they know how many miles I traveled last year. And so theoretically, they know the delta between those. And you could then theoretically charge somebody based on vehicle miles traveled that way, while giving lots and lots of credits and incentives to low-income people and allowing folks to take deductions for out-of-state travel that they can prove, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I would just suggest that we maybe look at a low-tech solution as well as a high-tech solution. And in terms of the money, I mean, the gas tax is going away. We all know that as fossil fuel consumption decreases and electric vehicles increase. So it'll be gone at some point, so we need something to replace it. And I just think this is a great place to start. And as Ryan said, we don't know. So let's do the studies and let's at least start the consideration. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Brian. And I have a response to that. Roadway pricing projects, for example, don't have to be physical projects. They could be policy-based. For example, if maybe a roadway pricing project might consist of working with employers to give employees transit discounts if they agree not to drive a certain amount or not to park at certain locations, for example. There's all types of policies like that that will fit under the umbrella of roadway pricing as well. So that's something that the region could look at as well. So,
Gina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first, again, Brian, it was a pleasure working with you when I was on staff, and yeah, I really appreciate your work on the study and all of your body of work for the 12 years of that you've been on staff. And congrats on the next steps. I hope we'll be in touch and yeah, come on back at some point. I wanted to note that Mayor Wu's campaign policy priorities included the need to really evaluate congestion pricing. And so we are really grateful that the board and MPO staff have taken the initiative to kind of understand the range of ways that roadways can be priced, the variety of goals that those strategies can advance, and where those align with the MPO's goals. it's also been really helpful to get an early look at some best practices from elsewhere and how they might guide our next steps. One of the things that really jumped out at me as I was reading the report was really pointed towards the MPO also in the 3C process, being well positioned to kind of continue advancing this work, because it seems like any successful program really has to be comprehensively thought through, be responsive to our region's demographics and economy and modes of travel, and the development that's coming online, changes in land use, the really intense coordination and cooperation that's going to be required between local, regional, state, federal actors, and then the imperative really to kind of continually engage stakeholders, evaluate progress, and make adjustments to make sure we're staying aligned on our goals, and that the whatever is being charged is still kind of incentivizing the types of choices we'd like to see. So I'm really glad that that our board has and staff have taken this on. Would like to express our support for the next steps, all of those that were outlined, and with a particular emphasis, as others have said, towards really understanding and wrapping our heads around the equity impacts and bringing disadvantaged communities to the table early and continuously. I would hope that as we think about the impacts, we're also keeping in mind, and I think this is where kind of having expertise of economists and whatnot as part of this is to understand the opportunity costs and the costs that were the prices that is being paid by not by having a very congested roadway system, and today, as well as costs that would be borne by folks actually paying tolls and whatnot. The other piece I wanted to kind of offer as a suggestion is I like the idea of having a stakeholder working group and beginning that sort of early. And I appreciated staff's suggestions on how to form one thoughtfully. Given the complexity of roadway pricing and the need to engage, politicians at various levels as well, I was curious if we might consider engaging a third-party expertise in mediation facilitation, something like what we saw for the Lower Mystic Working Group, which would be really helpful in bringing together such a range of different stakeholders. So again, thank you so much. I'm excited to kind of continue this conversation and line of work with you all.
Thank you, Jen. I unfortunately have to leave, so Eric's going to take the chair. And Eric, David Kosis has his hand up. You ready?
I'm ready. David Kosis. Thank you, David. Mueller.
Thank you, Ryan. Great work.
Thank you, David.
Like always. I'm wondering if we've ever seen any examples anywhere of a community that's actually been able to mitigate the cut-through traffic that that was on one of the slides. I'm not opposed to any of this. We should keep on talking about it, of course. But I think that the fact is that, if there's a specific area that has a toll, the higher the toll or the higher the fee, the more people will try to avoid paying it. And so, I think even without roadway pricing, we still have the Pike, right, running through Newton and other communities. And so cut through traffic to avoid paying a fee has always been a topic of discussion. And I'm not sure that, the cut through traffic's ever really been mitigated successfully. Maybe dividing the tolls into smaller little tolls has helped a little bit. I don't know. It just seems like we often talk about mitigation and trying to mitigate cut through traffic. I just think it would be great if there is an example that we could point to of somewhere that's actually been able to do it successfully. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, David. You're right. There will be diversions and cut-throughs to some degree if a roadway pricing is implemented. Probably the best example, I can think of two examples that were relatively successful. Number one, the Minnesota hot lanes, DOT hot lanes, has been moderately successful with avoiding cut-throughs and avoiding diversions. And there's even been a study that on those facilities showing that I'll say as far as income levels, it's pretty diverse as far as the user of the hot lanes, surprisingly. There are just as many, if not more, people who commute in the hot lanes that are low and mid income as high income. Probably the best example, though, would be the Penn Quarter Chinatown parking example of DC, which actually did reduce diversions and congestion in those neighborhoods, specifically people circling around the block to find a parking space. Because one of the details with that program, and I think that this is very important with any roadway pricing program, is that you have to get technology involved. And often that what it is maybe there's an app on your phone that tells you in advance that something is congested, something is not right in a certain location. And then you know to plan your commute based on either time or location, not as in a way not to avoid congestion. And that's very, very important. The DC parking project actually has an app where you actually could look block by block and actually shows you how many cars are parked on a specific block approximately and they just using different colors, red, yellow, or green. And if it's red, then you know they need to find a parking garage, for example, in advance. And that reduces driving around different places trying to find parking, for example.
All right, those are some good examples. Thank you, Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Ryan. Erin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Great conversation and presentation. This has been really interesting. I'm the town of Brookline, and one thing that's been really difficult with the housing crisis is just getting employees to the town. So I would say just in further study beyond considering disadvantaged communities and overall equity, to really think about that labor class. So operators, trades, teachers, emergency response, folks that may not be hitting your low and moderate income, but truly are looking at their paychecks week to week and what various types of incentives or disincentives may mean for them, who have very little flexibility potentially on the hours that they're commuting. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good comment. And that's one of the things, if a roadway pricing project was proposed, we'll have to evaluate who gets concessions, who gets discounts. And it's a long list of people. It could vary from teachers, public workers, low income people, of course, all the way up to emergency vehicles or and it's just it's a long list of people, and we have to just go down that list and check, okay, which groups can we afford to give a discount for, that sort of thing. Because and as I mentioned before, it would have to be a political balancing act when that situation arises, because if the price, it might be a good thing to have the price very high for people who have the ability to pay, but at the same time, it'll be very tough to get political buy-in from local politicians if the price is too high. So there has to be very detailed analysis done on who gets discounts and who doesn't. The New York congestion pricing program had to undergo that recently, and they actually indicated that certain groups were able to get discounts, but certain groups weren't. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ryan? So not seeing any, you know, it sounds like there's a lot of support here for additional work in this area. I think that will be a topic of conversation as part of the development of the next UPWP. Just, you know, staff, you know, do you feel like you've got some good information here that will help with the bringing this to UPWP? Do you agree that sort of the UPWP committee is the right place to kind of advance this conversation, Tegan?
Yeah, I'm happy to let Ryan, you respond as well. But what I want to preface this with, that question with, is that yes, I think the UPWP development process is an important place to consider what's coming up in the next federal fiscal year. But we do also have, you know, funds that we are still kind of organizing in terms of how we're using in terms of our programmatic work rather than discrete study work, that as we're going through this federal fiscal year, we can talk about how to continue some of this exploration as part of our current and ongoing programmatic work as well. So that's something we can think about and work with you as a board and the UPWP committee as they start you know, meeting more frequently to develop, so that we don't have to pause for 8 months per se before we even think about talking about a next step.
That sounds good.
Okay. Yes, I agree with Tegan 100%. And I think it's very important to maybe look at a follow-up study sooner rather than later with this topic, because this is a hot topic right now.
Okay. Thank you. So we will move to the next agenda item, 13, Stella Jordan, public engagement update.
Thank you, Eric, and thanks everyone. My name is Stella Jordan. I'm the Public Engagement Program Manager. I'm really excited to be with you all today talking about what we've been doing in the Public Engagement Program. If we could go on to the next slide, and the next one, please. So starting in federal fiscal year, or FFY 2022, the Public Engagement Plan, or PEP, made a commitment to documenting the engagement activities conducted each FFY to assess the effectiveness of our efforts. So a memo describing engagement activities during FFY 2023 has been posted to the MPO calendar for your review, and today I'm just going to provide an overview of our work in the past year, discuss some of the ways we evaluate effectiveness, and then highlight some ongoing goals for the program. So to start out, I'd like to just give a brief overview of the program. So the Public Engagement Program, guided by the PEP, ensures that we as an MPO are meeting our federal public participation requirements by facilitating inclusive public engagement and transparency in our planning and decision-making processes. We also aim to go beyond those federal requirements and be really proactive in making sure that we're providing meaningful opportunities for people in our region to get involved, and especially making sure that these opportunities are equitable and that they effectively reach folks who have been historically underrepresented in transportation planning. Next slide, please. So one of the key ways we accomplish this, and a central framework for the program over the past couple of years, is building and deepening relationships with stakeholders in the region. When I say stakeholders in the context of the engagement program, I'm mostly talking about folks who are a bit further removed from that planning process. So the outer circles in this graphic, people in groups who may have a harder time getting involved or may not have been previously involved in our work. Bringing these stakeholders in means that we're able to get broader and more diverse data about public needs, challenges, priorities, which then strengthens all of the work we produce. Next slide, please. And each year we engage stakeholders throughout the recurring development cycle of certification documents like the TIP and UPWP, as well as plans with longer development cycles like the LRTP and coordinated plan, which were both completed in FFY 2023, and also through our support to other MPO programs and projects occurring throughout the year. And if we go on to the next slide, I'll just briefly recap some of the activities we did during FFY 2023. So the engagement program supported the development of the TIP, UPWP, discrete studies, the Destination 2050 LRTP, the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan, the Title VI report, the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, and other MPO programs. And then we also advanced priorities within our own program, including research into best practices, data management, and of course, relationship building. Next slide, please. So I'd like to share some highlights from the program in FFY 2023. I think we saw a lot of success in our relationship building, and a big part of that was shifting the way we approach engagement for specific efforts. So rather than just thinking about how to talk about and get people involved in a really specific plan or project, we started thinking more about how we can get people involved in and build relationships around broader topic areas such as resilience or safety, and then bring their input into multiple work efforts that are relevant to those themes. Another highlight was our progress in collaboration with the Transportation Equity Program on developing and implementing equitable engagement strategies and processes to better reach and include equity communities. So we've been developing strategies to provide incentives for participation. This is both to recognize the value of folks' time and expertise and reduce resource-related barriers that people may face to engagement. We've also been developing processes to make it easier for us to provide translations and interpretation services when engaging with communities that have limited English proficiency. And then a third highlight in FFY 2023 was the external recognition we received for our engagement work and the opportunity to exchange strategies and best practices with peer agencies. We partnered with MAPC's engagement team to organize a peer exchange focused on equitable engagement over the summer. And we also were invited to participate in a US DOT peer exchange on equity and transportation planning. So a lot of the planning and strategizing that we've since been doing in our program has really been informed and enriched by takeaways from these sessions. Next slide, please. So by the numbers, FFY 2023 was a busy year for the engagement program, and it saw a significant increase in both engagement activities and public participation as compared to FFY 2022. So to briefly highlight a few of these numbers, in FFY 23, we held 2 well-attended virtual workshops. We supported several virtual events for MPO programs, met with MAPC sub-regional groups, and held advisory council meetings and events. We tabled at 3 in-person events and held 4 in-person pop-up engagement activities. If we go on to the next slide, we held over 65 individual and small group meetings with stakeholders. These were mostly community-based organizations, and this represented a roughly 150% increase in this type of engagement from FFY 2022. We also attended 17 community meetings held by community-based and advocacy organizations, representing about a 180% increase from FFY 22. Next slide, please. We also increased our survey engagement in FFY 23, conducting 8 public surveys for plans and projects, and collecting a total of around 2,700 responses. We include a standard set of optional demographic questions in all of our public surveys. We also collect zip codes, and we use this data to track the reach of our engagement efforts and then adjust our strategies in response to gaps. Go on to the next slide, talk about gaps. The geographic and demographic representation of survey respondents was better in FFY 23 than the previous year, and we were particularly effective in reaching older adults and people with disabilities. But we did identify several gaps in representation that will inform our goals and strategies in FFY 24, which I will talk more about in a bit. Next slide, please. So in last year's memo, we made several goals for the program in FFY 23. These included expanding our stakeholder relationships with a focus on advocacy and community-based organizations and the general public, employing a wider variety of engagement methods and strategies, improving tracking and evaluation and addressing gaps in engagement, and then continuing to invest in staff capacity and resources. So in FFY 23, we developed several new relationships with advocates and community groups, and we were able to get those stakeholders involved in multiple activities, again, really focused around their topics of interest. The studies we conducted in FFY 23 also offered opportunities for us to pilot new engagement strategies, such as in-person surveying with participation incentives for the Lynn intersection study, which was a great success in terms of the depth and diversity of data we collected by lowering barriers to participation. And in addition to the Lynn activities, we held and attended several other in-person events for the first time since before the pandemic, which really allowed us to address some of the gaps we had identified in digital-only engagement. And to better identify and address gaps, we also improved our tracking and analysis tools in FFY23. So the maps you'll see in section 4 of the memo are a preview of how we're planning to continue advancing our evaluation of engagement activities over the next several years. And then finally, in FFY23, we also laid the groundwork for hiring our newest team member to increase our engagement capacity and allow us to continue building upon all of this work in FFY24 and beyond. Next slide, please. We've looked at some of the metrics and some of the ways that we evaluate effectiveness of our work. I'd now like to talk a bit more about the impact of public engagement and input on our planning and decision making. I've pulled out 4 sort of outcomes of our work in FFY23 where I think that public involvement played a particularly salient role. So first, the vision, goals, and objectives in Destination 2050. I think we're significantly shaped by the input we received from a public visioning survey and related outreach. That was our most successful surveying effort since I've been at the MPO, and it also provided a lot of the information that we've been using to identify gaps. But respondents to that survey and to parallel outreach efforts about the LRTP planning framework highlighted public priorities, including safety, transit reliability and connectivity, and climate resilience, all of which, of course, are reflected in our Destination 2050 goal areas. Similarly, the coordinated plan that was finalized in FFY23 outlines the transportation needs of people with disabilities and older adults, which were collected entirely through engagement, including a public survey, a human services transportation coordination workshop, meetings with transit providers and other stakeholders, and discussions with the advisory council. Another important impact of engagement in FFY23 was an update to the TIP project scoring criteria regarding resilience to align with the resilience goal area established in Destination 2050. So this update was informed by a workshop that we held with environmental stakeholders, including advocates and community-based organizations, to identify priorities and best practices for resilient project design and evaluation. And in addition to informing the TIP criteria, staff also used that input to develop a resilient design guidebook for municipal planners. And then finally, in FFY23, we developed processes to provide compensation and incentives for public participation, which again, it really helps us value people's time and expertise and address resource-related barriers and gaps. So we piloted the use of one method involving incentives, which was the use of gift cards in the surveying process for the Lynn study that I mentioned earlier. And then we also laid the groundwork to start pursuing other methods this year in FFY24, including direct partnerships on engagement with community-based organizations. Next slide, please. So a core goal for the program in FFY24 will continue to be building and deepening relationships with stakeholders, especially advocacy and community-based organizations and members of the public who have not been as involved in the planning process. So we'll continue to do this and prioritize building relationships with equity communities in particular by continuing to refine our methods for effectively identifying and addressing gaps in engagement. As you'll see in the maps and charts included in the memo, we have identified several gaps in our FFY23 engagement. These include engaging minority communities, people with limited English proficiency, and young people, as well as other equity communities outside of the inner core and folks who have not previously engaged with the MPO. So we'll be using this data in FFY24 to inform our engagement strategies and activities. This includes cultivating relationships and partnerships with organizations who can help us reach those communities that we're not currently reaching, and also exploring more opportunities supported by new federal best practices guidance to provide incentives and other types of support, such as childcare or food, to be more responsive to community barriers, needs, and preferences. Next slide, please. And I just quickly want to thank all of the staff who have been involved in and supported the engagement program, the engagement activities I've discussed today, as well as, of course, the board for your continued and consistent support of this work. I really look forward to continuing to work with you all in the coming year on making sure that our process is informed by public engagement. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chair I'm happy to answer any questions, and I also have some discussion prompts on the slide here as well. Would really welcome any suggestions you all have on the direction of the program going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Great presentation. Really great work that you and the team are doing here. Any questions for Stella about the presentation, or any interest in responding to any of these discussion topics? Len Diggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is great, Stella. Time is short. We'll take this up in future near-term advisory council meeting. Thank you.
Eric, I think you called on me. I heard a little burst of noise there. But Stella and everybody, thank you for this report. Thank you for all the hard work that you clearly put into the program over the last year. I'm particularly thrilled that you have the capacity to do all of this work now, and that the CDPS has been growing this team and your capacity. I'm also particularly would applaud your initiative to compensate people for participating. I think that's incredibly important for kind of achieving the equitable representation, hearing all the voices that we want to hear in the transportation planning process. And I just want to offer to facilitate anything you need with the MBTA. My email, my phone is always open if you ever need to talk to us, if you'd like us to come and participate in something you're doing. And I will take it back to my team, and we'll think a little bit about the prompt about priorities to suggest for the engagement. So again, thank you. Congratulations to you and Sean and the whole team.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate it.
Jen Rowe.
Thank you. So I guess similar to Len and Sandy, really appreciate this work. I can certainly appreciate having been in your position, kind of the challenge it can be to engage folks who are less proximate to the MPO planning process, which while I think very impactful to folks' everyday lives, can sometimes be hard to draw those connections. So I really think it's very commendable that you've been continuing to try to connect directly with the general public, in addition to the range of folks who are already closer to the MPO planning process. It was neat hearing that the theme-specific engagement activities seem to bring new stakeholders to the table. I thought that was an interesting learning that I think is fantastic. And I'm glad that Vision Zero seems to be another potential avenue to do that. And with this, the city of Boston, we're also kind of working, I think, in parallel in certain ways along some of the challenges you've outlined in terms of, and really applaud your ability to kind of evaluate effectiveness and gaps, and that's something we're hoping to do more of too. So I will definitely, similar to Sandy, would love to be in touch with you all, and maybe doing some information sharing around how we're and I think one piece maybe we can offer too is we've been also working specifically around engaging youth more in our planning processes. So potentially there might be some good overlap there with year's goal in that direction. So thank you again, and really excited to see this continue forward.
Great.
Thank you, Jen.
Any other questions or comments? Great. Well, not seeing any. Thanks again, Stella. Great work. And we will move to agenda item 14, and I'll turn it to Annette Demscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello, everyone. Next slide, please. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Annette Demscher, the Director of Policy and Planning. I'm here today to provide you with an update on progress we've made toward addressing the corrective action and recommendations from the 2022 Federal Planning Certification. You may recall that our federal partners conduct a certification review every 4 years to ensure that we are meeting federal requirements. As a part of this review, they also provide constructive feedback and suggestions on ways we can enhance and improve our work. Next slide, please. Action Plan is a document that we submit quarterly to our federal partners. It provides updates on the progress we have made on addressing the recommendations and corrective action from the certification review. When Tegan last updated you in August 2023, she committed to providing you with regular reports to both keep you aware of the progress we are making together with you and to keep the recommendations from our federal partners fresh in our minds so that we can capitalize on their guidance to improve our planning processes. Next slide, please. I'm pleased to note that we have addressed our one corrective action, which was to document in our Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, the process for sharing information to develop the annual list of obligated projects. Next slide, please. This process was documented in the revised MOU that was also included minor updates, and it went into effect September 1st, 2023. I thank all of you for your help with that update, with special thanks to the Ad Hoc MOU Committee. Next slide, please. I'm also pleased to inform you that we have addressed the recommendation to assess our approach to providing language assistance using the new census data. Next slide, please. Staff updated our language assistance plan using this newly released data, and this updated plan was submitted to MassDOT in November. This new plan describes our efforts to be more responsive to local language needs by developing relationships with community groups and also developing engagement resources that are tailored to the needs and interests of our limited English proficient communities. Next slide, please. I'll now move on to providing you with updates on the progress we're making on the rest of the recommendations, which fell into 6 categories. They are organizational structure, public outreach and involvement, civil rights, non-motorized planning, environmental mitigation, consultation and resiliency, and performance-based planning and programming. Next slide, please. One of the recommendations in the organizational structure category was to update the MOU with 3 specific components. First was to rewrite it in a way that sufficiently covers the necessary provisions, but allows for details to be developed and updated more regularly in an operations plan or bylaws. The second was to formally establish how the MPO intends to have the interests of the RTAs represented. And the third is to establish and adhere to a review cycle for the MOU. Next slide, please. To address these recommendations, we completed a review of the MOU, developed an operations plan, and established the MOU committee to recommend further updates to the MOU that, among other items, will address these recommendations. As Tom reported to you earlier today, the MOU committee met for the first time Tuesday and has established a work plan for updating the MOU over the next 9 months, including addressing these recommendations. Next slide, please. Another recommendation in the organizational structure category is to look for opportunities to identify and advance local and regional projects with target funds. This is related to the issue of building up a pipeline of local and regional priority projects that are ready and have been scored by the MPO to be able to utilize funds that become available in a near-term year. Next slide, please. We've undertaken several efforts to address this recommendation. Staff have been engaging with MassDOT staff and directly with municipalities to identify projects for years when funding isn't fully allocated and fill-in projects for near-term years when funding becomes available. We launched the project design pilot to help advance local and regional projects, and the response to this has been significant, with 15 projects requested across 16 communities, amounting to approximately $18.4 million. Just to note, we currently have $4 million set aside for the program in federal fiscal year 2025. This level of demand illustrates the desire for communities to advance projects when funding is available for design. Also launched the TIP Process Engagement and Readiness Committee. One of the goals of the committee is to help in this area, and they have brainstormed ways to ensure success of the design pilot. They will also continue to look for other ways to advance local and regional projects. In addition, staff have committed to review our completed studies and other work, such as the CMP, gaps analyses, and MassDOT information to help identify more local and regional projects. Next slide, please. The third recommendation under the organizational structure category that I will update you on today is to explore innovative ways to fund projects that ensure that our target funds get used. This is directly related to the previous recommendation. Next slide, please. As such, we initiated the project design pilot, which I just mentioned, to help address this recommendation. We also established the transit transformation and bike share support programs to support new types of projects that previously weren't funded and that are aligned with our access and connectivity goals. And we continue to explore innovative ways to fund projects and work toward advancing the carryover of unprogrammed target funds. Next slide, please. The rest of the updates I will provide today are more about the progress we are making on ongoing and longer-term actions to address the recommendations. So the first is in the public outreach and engagement category. As Stella informed you of the work we're doing there, we continue to build and strengthen relationships with community groups and advocacy organizations, including attending their meetings and events outside of standard business hours. We're also holding more in-person events where we're sharing informational materials and conducting interactive activities. We're increasing our efforts to engage limited English proficient communities with translated information materials and non-language based activities. And finally, as Stella mentioned, we did pilot using gift cards to compensate members of the public for their time engaging with us and providing useful input. Next slide, please. In the non-motorized planning category, we are establishing a bicycle and pedestrian advisory group to help identify which type of product would be most useful for delivering a regional plan to improve the safety and comfort of people walking and bicycling in our region. Next slide, please. In the environmental mitigation, consultation, and resiliency category, we are conducting a study on environmental engagement, and we've begun establishing and strengthening relationships with federal and state environmental resource agencies, as well as other related stakeholders. Next slide, please. In the performance-based planning and programming category, we are actively working to update the performance dashboard and have engaged the Advisory Council for input on its functionality, metrics, and data visualizations. We are also finalizing the 2020 TIP before and after study, and will explore options for additional funding sources and partnerships to assess additional projects. Next slide, please. So, what opportunities exist for your engagement in the near term? Along with your continuing support and guidance on implementing the recommendations, there are 3 specific opportunities coming up. As Tom mentioned, over the course of the next 9 months or so, the MOU Update Committee will be providing you with recommendations for updating the MOU, and we appreciate your feedback on those recommendations. The TIP Process Readiness and Engagement Committee will explore ways to funding pipeline and work to identify innovative funding strategies, and we look forward to your input on these. And then the third is you will be selecting design projects for programming in the TIP, which is coming up shortly. So thank you so much for your continuing help addressing the items in our action plan. Next slide, please. That, I'll turn it over to the chair.
Thank you, Annette. Lots of great progress here. Any questions for Annette? Yes, Jen Rowe.
Thank you. First, thanks for the report back. Really great seeing all the progress. And we'll also second the invitation for folks to engage with the TIP committee. It's been some really great conversations so far, and I believe our next one is February 15th. Staff can correct me if I got that wrong. My one question was, you mentioned that there was an effort to form an advisory group around bicycle and pedestrian concerns. I was curious if that was distinct from or connected to the Vision Zero group, and if not, if there were ways to kind of learn more about that and potentially volunteer.
Yeah, it's something that we're just working on right now. It is distinct from the vision, but obviously there is some overlap there. Yeah. Casey Cooper is the person to contact about that.
Great. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, Annette, for that update. And we will move to members' items. Are there any members' items today? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I know this has been a little bit of a longer meeting today. Oh, Brian Kane.
Well, if you're ready, I'll move to adjourn.
That would be great. I'll accept that motion to adjourn. Do I have a second, Len?
Sure do. Impressive. Pulling it in, getting it all done. Great.
Yeah, no, great discussion today, and looking forward to some good follow-up from some of the discussion. Without unless there's any objection, then we are adjourned. And thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.